Have you ever heard of a woman whose beauty brought unimaginable wealth, but also certain death? In the ancient hills of eastern Nigeria, elders still tell a story that parents whisper to their children whenever greed begins to blind the human heart. It is not a story about beauty. It is not a story about riches. It is a story about the terrible price of desiring what was never meant to be possessed. Listen carefully, because this is the story of Amara, long before great roads crossed the land, before strangers came from distant shores. There stood a peaceful Igbo village surrounded by rolling green hills, towering Iroko trees, and sacred forests older than memory itself. The people lived simple lives. At sunrise, farmers walked to their fields. Women filled the village market with baskets of fresh vegetables, yams, and palm oil. Children chased one another through dusty paths, while elders gathered beneath the oldest tree to settle disputes and tell stories of their ancestors. Life followed the rhythm of the seasons until one extraordinary night, the moon disappeared. Darkness swallowed the sky. A total eclipse covered the land. Many villagers locked themselves inside their huts, believing the spirits were walking among men. It was during that strange night that a young woman cried out in labor. Hours later, a baby girl entered the world. Her name was Amara. Before her mother could even hold her child for long, a knock echoed at the wooden door. No one expected visitors during an eclipse. Standing outside was an elderly woman dressed in faded wrappers, unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. She carried a small carved wooden box against her chest. Without greeting anyone, she stepped inside. The room became strangely silent. Even the newborn stopped crying. The old woman slowly opened the wooden box. Inside rested a plain bronze bracelet. There were no jewels, no decorations. Nothing about it suggested it possessed any special value. Yet everyone in the room felt an unexplainable fear. The old woman gently placed the bracelet around the baby's tiny wrist. Then she spoke words that would haunt generations. She must never remove this bracelet. Her voice was calm, but every word felt heavier than stone. The day it leaves her wrist, every promise made to your bloodline will come due. The frightened family stared at her in silence. Amara's mother finally gathered enough courage to ask, "What promise? Who made it? What does this mean?" But before another question could be spoken, the old woman turned, walked through the doorway, and disappeared into the darkness of the forest. No footprints, no sound, nothing. From that day forward, no one ever saw her again, or so they believed. Years passed. Amara grew from a curious little girl into a graceful young woman. Through every season of her life, the bronze bracelet never left her wrist. The villagers remembered the old woman's warning. But as time went on, many began to believe it was nothing more than an old legend. The years passed quietly. The strange visitor became nothing more than an old story repeated during moonlit evenings. Amara grew into a kind and cheerful young woman. She was beautiful, yes, but not in a way that stopped people in their tracks. She laughed easily. She greeted everyone with respect. Every morning before sunrise, she helped her mother prepare baskets of vegetables for the village market. The bronze bracelet never left her wrist. Soon, it became part of her. Children assumed she had been born wearing it. Even Amara rarely thought about its purpose. By her 23rd year, life seemed perfectly ordinary, or so everyone believed. Then came the market day that changed everything. The village square was alive with voices. Women bargained over baskets of yams. Palm wine sellers called out to passing travelers. Blacksmiths hammered glowing iron beneath shaded shelters. Goats wandered between stalls while children chased one another through the dusty paths. Amara smiled as she arranged fresh vegetables on her wooden table. Customers gathered quickly. Everyone liked buying from her because she always treated people fairly. Among the crowd stood a wealthy trader from a neighboring kingdom. His eyes never left the bronze bracelet. He had heard whispers that it possessed mysterious power. Greed slowly entered his heart. While Amara turned to measure vegetables for an elderly customer, the trader reached forward. With practiced fingers, he slipped the bracelet from her wrist. No one noticed. For a single heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the wind stopped. Birds fell silent. Even the market drums seemed to lose their rhythm. A strange warmth spread across the village square. It felt as though the sun itself had descended to earth. People slowly turned toward Amara. Every conversation ended. Every sound disappeared. The young woman standing beside the vegetable stall was no longer merely beautiful. She radiated an impossible presence. Her face seemed to glow with a light that belonged neither to the sun nor the moon. Her eyes reflected a beauty no words could describe. It was as though every person's deepest dream had suddenly taken human form. One by one, baskets slipped from trembling hands. A farmer forgot the price of his harvest. A bridegroom abandoned his own wedding procession. Merchants left piles of gold unattended. Warriors lowered their spears. No one could look away. Some smiled without knowing why. Others began to weep. Several men fell to their knees. They did not worship Amara. They simply forgot how to do anything else. Fear spread even faster than admiration. Women rushed to gather their husbands. Mothers pulled their sons indoors. The village priest stepped forward, clutching sacred symbols. He stared at Amara for several long moments before whispering with trembling lips, "This is no ordinary woman. The spirits are walking among us." Those words raced through the village before sunset. By nightfall, some called Amara blessed, others called her cursed, but the one who cried the hardest was her own mother, because she remembered the warning spoken 23 years earlier. The day it leaves her wrist, every promise made to your bloodline will come due. For the first time, she understood that the old woman had never been speaking in riddles. The promise had finally awakened. By the following morning, the entire village had changed. Men who had never spoken to Amara before now gathered outside her family compound before sunrise. Some brought baskets overflowing with yams. Others arrived with goats, chickens, and expensive gifts. Young warriors challenged one another, hoping to prove themselves worthy of winning her heart. Even wealthy elders, already married many times over, suddenly found reasons to visit her home. No one questioned why. They simply believed they had found the greatest treasure on earth. Amara herself was terrified. She could not understand why everyone looked at her differently. The attention felt heavy. Every smile she offered only made people admire her more. Every kind word seemed to draw them closer. Unable to bear the growing fear, her mother sought the oldest herbalist in the region. The man lived alone beyond the edge of the forest, where ancient medicinal trees surrounded a weathered mud hut. People said he knew secrets older than the village itself. When he saw Amara from a distance, his face turned pale. He refused to let her enter his compound. Instead, he bowed his head and whispered, "So, it has finally begun." Amara's mother fell to her knees. "Please, tell me how to save my daughter." The old herbalist closed his eyes for a long time. When he finally spoke, his words froze everyone where they stood. The bracelet was never protecting the girl. He looked directly at Amara. It was protecting the world from what rests upon her bloodline. Silence swallowed the clearing. The herbalist continued. Many generations ago, your ancestors made a covenant with powerful spirits. In exchange for blessings beyond imagination, they offered something no family should ever promise: the desires of every future generation. Amara frowned. I don't understand. The old man sighed deeply. Anyone who truly falls in love with you enters that ancient covenant. The spirits search the deepest corners of that person's heart. They discover the one thing that person desires above everything else. And then they grant it. His voice grew softer. If he dreams of wealth, he becomes richer than kings. If he longs for power, he rises above rulers. If he craves influence, the world opens every door before him. The blessings come quickly, almost effortlessly, as though invisible hands remove every obstacle. Amara remembered the stories: the wealthy farmer, the palace builder, the crowned king. Every one of them had married women from her bloodline. Every one of them had risen higher than anyone imagined possible. But every one of them had died unexpectedly. The herbalist nodded slowly, as if hearing her thoughts. The spirits always keep their promises, but they always collect payment. The greater the blessing, the closer death walks behind the one who receives it. The forest became painfully quiet. Leaves drifted gently through the air. No one spoke. No one moved. Finally, Amara whispered the question she feared most. So, if someone truly loves me, they will die? The old herbalist lowered his eyes. Not because they loved you. He paused. They die because they desired something more than love. Those words echoed through Amara's mind long after they left the forest. That night, she made the hardest decision of her life. She packed only a small bundle of clothes. She waited until the village had fallen asleep. Then, without saying goodbye, without leaving a note, without looking back, Amara disappeared into the ancient forest. If no man could ever find her, then no man would ever pay the price. She would rather live alone forever than watch another innocent life be destroyed. The forest became Amara's home. Days turned into months. Months slowly became years. Far from the noise of the village, she built a small mud hut beside an abandoned river shrine. The elders once believed the shrine had been a place where the spirits listened to the prayers of the people. But after many strange disappearances, no one dared to visit it anymore. Only birds nested among its broken stones. Only the river remembered the songs that had once echoed there. For Amara, it was the perfect place to disappear. Each morning she fetched water from the river. She gathered wild fruits, medicinal herbs, and firewood. She planted vegetables in a small garden behind her hut. She spoke to no one. She wanted no visitors. Most of all, she wanted no one to love her. Sometimes hunters passed through the forest. The moment they caught sight of her, they froze in silent amazement. Before they could speak, Amara would disappear among the trees. Soon stories spread across nearby villages. Some claimed forest spirits guarded the old shrine. Others believed a beautiful ghost wandered the riverbank at sunrise. No one knew the truth. Years passed. Then one evening, dark clouds swallowed the sky. Rain poured so heavily that even the birds searched desperately for shelter. Thunder rolled across the hills. Amara had just finished securing the roof of her hut when she heard it, a faint groan. She stopped. There it was again. Someone was calling for help. Without hesitation, she grabbed a burning torch and followed the sound through the rain. Not far from the shrine, a man lay unconscious beneath a fallen tree. His clothes were torn. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. A broken spear lay beside him, judging by the deep wounds on his back. He had barely escaped death. Amar looked around carefully. No attackers, no footprints, only the endless sound of falling rain. She could have walked away. She knew bringing a stranger into her life could awaken the very curse she had spent years avoiding. But kindness spoke louder than fear. With great effort, she dragged the wounded traveler back to her hut. For 3 days, he remained unconscious. She cleaned his wounds with medicinal leaves. She boiled herbs taught to her by the old herbalist. She stayed awake through the nights, changing bandages and whispering prayers that he would survive. On the morning of the 4th day, the stranger slowly opened his eyes. He looked around the small hut in confusion. Then he saw Amara. She expected the same reaction she had seen countless times before. The silence, the endless staring, the look of complete fascination. Instead, the man simply smiled weakly. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Thank you. You saved my life." Nothing more. No astonishment, no obsession, no desperate admiration, just simple gratitude. Amar blinked in surprise. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to be treated like an ordinary human being. "My name is Amara," she said softly. The stranger frowned as though searching for something hidden inside his own mind. After a long silence, he shook his head. I don't remember much. My name," he pressed a hand against his forehead. I think it's Chibuzo." He closed his eyes again. "I can't remember anything else." Amar soon learned that he had survived an attack by bandits. The blow to his head had stolen nearly all his memories. He remembered his name. He remembered how to work with his hands. Everything else had vanished like smoke carried by the wind. Neither of them knew it then, but fate had finally brought together the only two people capable of ending a curse that had survived for centuries. The days that followed were unlike anything Amar had known. Chibuzo recovered slowly. His wounds healed one by one, but his memories never returned. He never asked about the strange shrine. He never questioned why she lived alone in the forest. Instead, he simply helped. When the roof leaked, he repaired it. When firewood ran low, he gathered enough for weeks. He carved stools, bowls, and farming tools from fallen trees. His hands moved with the confidence of a master craftsman, even though he could not remember where he had learned such skills. Soon, laughter returned to Amara's home. For the first time in years, the lonely hut beside the river felt alive. One morning, as they worked together in the garden, Chibuzo smiled. "You know, I don't even remember who I was, but every day I wake up here, it feels like I've finally found where I belong." Amara looked away. Those words frightened her, not because she disliked him, but because she had begun to feel the same way. Weeks turned into months. The rainy season gave way to sunshine. The river swelled and shrank again. Without realizing it, they built a quiet life together. One evening, they sat beside a small fire, watching the stars. The forest was unusually still. Amara's voice trembled. "There is something you must know about me." She told him everything. The mysterious woman, the bronze bracelet, the impossible beauty, the wealthy husbands, the terrible covenant, the deaths. She expected fear. She expected him to leave before sunrise. Instead, Chibuso listened without interrupting. When she finished, he stared into the fire for a long time. Finally, he smiled. "If everything you said is true, then I've already made my choice." Amara shook her head. "You don't understand. If you love me, you could die." Chibuzo gently picked up a small piece of firewood and tossed it into the flames. The only thing I know is that before I met you, I had nothing, no memories, no family, no purpose. He looked into her eyes. I don't want riches. I don't want titles. I don't want kingdoms. I only want tomorrow. If tomorrow is with you. Tears filled Amara's eyes. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Every other man had seen the miracle surrounding her. Chibuzo saw only the woman standing before him. For the first time since the bracelet left her wrist, Amara allowed herself to hope. Several weeks later, beneath the tallest Iroko tree in the forest, with no priests, no chiefs, no crowds, only the whispering wind and the songs of birds, Amara and Chibuzo made their vows. They promised to walk through every season of life together. They exchanged simple woven rings, and under the ancient branches, they became husband and wife. Amara waited. One day passed, then another, a week, a month. She watched carefully for signs of the covenant. Nothing happened. Chibuzo remained exactly the same. He did not wake to discover hidden treasure. He did not become famous. No messenger arrived with news of a royal appointment. He continued carving wood, repairing roofs, building stools for nearby villages. His hands earned just enough to provide a simple life. And strangely, he seemed perfectly content. Another year passed, then another. He remained an ordinary carpenter. And more importantly, he remained alive. For the first time in generations, the ancient covenant appeared to have failed. Or perhaps it had never worked the way anyone believed. News travels in strange ways. A hunter carried the first rumor back to the village. He spoke of a woman living beside the abandoned river shrine, a woman of impossible beauty, and a carpenter who had lived with her for years, without becoming wealthy, without becoming powerful, most shocking of all, without dying. The story spread from one village to another. Soon the elders could no longer ignore it. If the curse has truly been broken, one elder said, then everything our ancestors believed was a lie. Another elder shook his head. No, curses do not simply disappear. They are either fulfilled or understood. Determined to uncover the truth, the council gathered the oldest men and women of the land. Together they climbed the sacred hill where the oldest shrine stood. The shrine had long been abandoned. Its clay walls were cracked. Thick vines wrapped around ancient stone pillars. Dust covered everything. It was said that no one had entered the inner chamber for more than 200 years. With trembling hands, the oldest priest pushed open the heavy wooden doors. The air inside smelled of age and forgotten secrets. Rows of carved shelves lined the walls. Bundles of dried palm leaf manuscripts rested beneath layers of dust. These were the records of their ancestors, written long before any living person had been born. For days, the elders searched. They read faded symbols by the light of oil lamps. Some writings had nearly disappeared. Others were damaged by insects and time. Many seemed to contradict one another, just as hope began to fade. The oldest woman among them gasped. I found it. Everyone hurried to her side. She carefully unfolded a brittle scroll wrapped in red cloth. Its title had almost vanished with age, The Covenant of Desire. Silence filled the chamber. Slowly, she began to read. The spirits do not judge love. They answer desire. The elders looked at one another in confusion. She continued reading. When a heart seeks power through another, the covenant awakens. When a heart seeks wealth through another, the covenant answers. When a heart desires glory above truth, the bargain is sealed. The room became perfectly still. One elder whispered, "It was never about marriage." Another nodded slowly. "It was never about beauty." The oldest woman continued, "The spirits grant the deepest desire hidden within the human heart. But every gift taken without wisdom demands the life of the one who receives it." Suddenly, everything made sense. The richest farmer had secretly dreamed of becoming the wealthiest man in 3 kingdoms. The palace builder had hungered for greatness. The king had desired a throne more than anything else. None of them had truly loved Amara. They had loved what they believed she could give them. The covenant had simply revealed the truth already hidden inside their hearts. Then it had collected its payment. One elder lowered his head in shame. "We blamed an innocent woman for the greed of men." Another quietly added, "And we called it a curse." Far away, unaware of what the elders had discovered, Amara and Chibuzo sat outside their small home beside the river, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Neither of them realized that centuries of misunderstanding were finally coming to an end. But the greatest truth had not yet been revealed. Deep within the ancient forest, another secret still waited, watching and preparing to emerge. The harvest season arrived. For the first time in many years, laughter returned to every corner of the village. The elders announced what everyone had longed to hear. "The curse is over." Drums echoed through the hills. Women danced in colorful wrappers. Children raced through the village square. Palm wine flowed freely as families celebrated late into the night. Many believed a new chapter had begun. But while the village rejoiced, far away in the forest, someone was quietly making her way toward Amara's home. She walked with the steady steps of someone who had crossed the same path countless times. Her clothes looked exactly as they had decades earlier. Not a wrinkle had appeared on her face. Not a strand of grey touched her hair. Time itself seemed unable to claim her. As the evening sun disappeared behind the trees, she stopped outside the small hut. Amara looked up from grinding cassava. The wooden bowl slipped from her hands. Her heart pounded. She knew that face. It was the same mysterious woman who had arrived on the night she was born. The woman smiled gently. "You have grown into the woman I hoped you would become." Amara struggled to find her voice. You haven't changed." The stranger gave a quiet smile. "Some journeys are longer than a human lifetime." At that moment, Chibuzo stepped outside carrying freshly carved wooden tools. The instant the old woman saw him, her smile faded. Instead, she bowed her head. Not to Amara, but to Chibuzo. A strange silence settled over the forest. The birds stopped singing, even the wind seemed to disappear. The old woman spoke softly. "You finally found your way home." Chibuzo frowned. "I don't know you." She nodded. "I know. You were never meant to remember." She slowly raised her hand and pointed toward his right shoulder. Without warning, a faint golden mark began glowing beneath his skin. Chibuzo staggered backward in pain. His breathing became heavy. Images flashed through his mind. Ancient forests, sacred fires, warriors kneeling before invisible spirits, a towering Iroko tree surrounded by glowing figures. He dropped to one knee as memories flooded back. Not memories from childhood, but memories from another age, another lifetime, another existence. Amara rushed to his side. "Chibuzo," he looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I remember." The old woman took a slow step forward. "You were never an ordinary carpenter. You were the last guardian chosen to watch over the covenant." Amara stared at her in disbelief. The old woman continued. Centuries ago, you were entrusted with protecting the balance between human desire and the spirits. But your heart grew weary. You abandoned your duty. The covenant remained, but without its guardian. People forgot its true purpose. They blamed beauty instead of greed. They feared love instead of desire. Chibuzo covered his face with trembling hands. I failed. The old woman gently shook her head. No, you merely lost your way. She looked at Amar. The spirits allowed your memories to disappear, so you could learn what love feels like. Without power, without duty, without fear. Then she spoke the words neither of them expected. You have uncovered only half of the truth. Amar's heartbeat quickened. If the curse wasn't meant to destroy me, what was its purpose? The old woman slowly turned toward the bronze bracelet resting on Amar's wrist. Her eyes filled with quiet sorrow. The bracelet was never a prison. It was always the final key. Amara looked down at the bronze bracelet. For as long as she could remember, it had been part of her life. She had feared it. She had blamed it. She had believed it carried the curse that had stolen happiness from generations before her. Now, everything she believed was changing. Chibuzo slowly rose to his feet. The glowing mark on his shoulder shone brighter than before. Fragments of forgotten memories continued to return. I remember the sacred fire, he whispered. I remember the oath. I remember why I was chosen. The old woman smiled. Then you also remember how the covenant ends. Chibuzo closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down his face. Yes, but I prayed I would never have to ask her. Amar looked from one face to the other. What are you talking about? The old woman reached for Amar's hand. She gently touched the bronze bracelet. This bracelet is not the source of the covenant. It is its lock. The covenant can only be broken by two people. She looked directly into Amara's eyes. A woman who willingly releases what she has feared all her life. Then she turned to Chibuzo. And a man who loves her without asking for anything in return. Silence settled over the forest. The evening breeze rustled the leaves of the ancient Iroko tree. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Amara took a slow breath. If destroying the covenant will free every generation after us, then I choose freedom. She lifted her trembling hand. For the first time since the night of her birth, she reached for the bracelet. It slid from her wrist without resistance. The moment it left her skin, the earth shuddered. Birds burst from the trees. The river began to swirl, as though pulled by an invisible force, deep within the forest. An ancient fire ignited inside the forgotten shrine. Its flames burned without wood, without smoke, without wind. The old woman pointed toward it. The fire has been waiting for centuries. Together, Amar and Chibuzo walked toward the shrine. Neither of them looked back. Every step felt as though the forest itself was watching. At the edge of the sacred fire, Chibuzo took Amara's hand. He smiled, not with fear, but with peace. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Amara smiled through her tears. Together? She opened her hand. The bronze bracelet caught the light one final time. Then they cast it into the sacred flames. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the forest roared. The moment the bracelet disappeared into the sacred fire. The earth shook with a force no one had felt in generations. The flames rose high above the trees, burning with brilliant shades of gold and white, yet nothing around them caught fire. The forest was not being destroyed. It was being cleansed. Across distant kingdoms, the covenant began to unravel. A magnificent palace built by a ruler who had sacrificed truth for endless wealth cracked from its foundation. Within moments, its towering walls crumbled into dust. In another land, vaults filled with gold simply vanished. Jewels that had been treasured for generations dissolved into grains of ordinary sand. Greedy rulers awoke in terror as the symbols of their power disappeared before their eyes. Ancient treasures hidden beneath temples were swallowed by the earth. Secret fortunes buried beneath royal compounds were lost forever. It was as though the spirits were collecting every gift that had been accepted through selfish desire, not to punish humanity, but to restore balance. As dawn approached, a strange peace settled over the land. People opened their eyes, feeling lighter. Many could no longer remember why they had spent their lives chasing riches above everything else. Old enemies embraced. Families long divided by inheritance found reasons to forgive. The hunger for power that had consumed so many hearts began to fade, like mist beneath the morning sun. Back at the sacred shrine, the flames slowly disappeared. The trembling earth became still. Silence returned to the forest. Amar looked down at the river's reflection. For a moment, she did not recognize the woman staring back. The supernatural beauty that had once captivated kingdoms was gone. Her face now looked ordinary, simple, human. She touched her cheek and smiled, not because she had become less beautiful, but because, for the very first time, people would see her before they saw the power others imagined she possessed. She was finally free. Beside her stood Chibuzo. The glowing mark upon his shoulder slowly faded until it disappeared completely. His burden as the final guardian had ended. He took Amara's hand. This time, not as a guardian, not as a chosen one, simply as a husband who loved his wife. The mysterious old woman watched them quietly. A peaceful smile crossed her face. "My work is finished." A warm breeze swept through the trees. The morning light surrounded her, and just as mysteriously as she had appeared on the night of Amara's birth, she was gone. No footprints, no farewell, only silence. Years passed. The abandoned shrine slowly became part of the forest once again. Children played where fear had once ruled. Travelers rested beneath the great Iroko tree without knowing the history it had witnessed. Amara and Chibuzo lived long, peaceful lives. They never became rich. They never ruled a kingdom. Their home remained small. Their hands remained busy. Their hearts remained full. And when they finally grew old, they were surrounded not by gold, but by children, grandchildren, friends, and a community that loved them for who they were. To this day, when elders gather beneath the moonlight to tell stories to the young, they end with these words: "The greatest curse is not beauty. It is the desire to possess what was never meant to be owned. And the greatest blessing is a heart that chooses love over greed." Perhaps that is why the old stories survive, not because they teach us to fear spirits, but because they remind us that every choice begins in the human heart. The end.